And this is Paula. And we'll call him Paula. And that was our song at our wedding. And some of you older kids might know that. No. But a little about myself. I'd like to tell a little about each of us. I didn't grow up Catholic. And I grew up Methodist. And actually didn't even really grow up Methodist. My mom, we were a fairly poor family, and my mom would take us and drop us off at church so that she could go shopping. And so that was my introduction into religion. So I didn't really have a great background in religion. I like to go and sing in the choir and participate in the little craft things that we did on Sunday. And we had a Sunday school. So that was my introduction into religion. And it wasn't until I met Paula in college that I got introduced into the Catholic faith, and I really got excited about it. I still kind of drug my feet, though, because we got married in 1985, and it was not until 1988, the year that Chase was born, right before that, I became Catholic. So it took me a while, but I wanted my children to be raised in the Catholic faith, so I joined the Catholic Church. I was fortunate to have Paula's father as my sponsor. I was never baptized until I was confirmed and became Catholic. So that's a little about me. I'll let Paula tell you about her.
Well, I grew up just west of here in a little town called Polish, and I went to Andrew High School. All of our kids went to Andrew High School. I think some of the Derby High School kids have wrestled our boys. So, kind of have a relationship there, but I grew up just west of here. I grew up Catholic. I came from a family of 12 kids. I'm the youngest of 12. And went to college at Fort Hays State. Met this really cool guy, and we got married. I never asked Paul to become Catholic. That was his choice. I wanted it to be his choice if he chose to. But like you said, when we were pregnant with our first son, Chase, he didn't want our kids to ask him questions about the Catholic faith and not be able to answer them and have to say, go ask your mom. So also he told me that he would go to church with me, and it was very impressive of how many people were so faithful in the Catholic Church. And if that many people felt that way, there must be something wonderful about it. And it always made me feel really, really good and very proud to be a Catholic. So we got married, and we lived in Hays for the first 14 years of our marriage, at least 14 years. And we had our kids, and our first one was Chase, and he is now 27. We are a football family, so that's him on senior night at Andale. And then our second one is Cole, and again, senior night. And our youngest is Clay. And we always have to talk a little bit about Clay because God helped prepare us for what we were going to go through with Chase. Little did we know at the time, but when Clay, our youngest, was 18 months old, he was diagnosed with cancer. Clay is now 23 years old. He's engaged to be married, and he is cancer-free. So that ordeal was our first, introduction into putting your faith totally in God's hands. And God worked wonders with Clay. And I'll let Paul go ahead and talk about Chase.
So this is a family picture that we took after the accident, and as you can see, Chase is doing really well now. A little about Chase. Chase was really active when he was little. He would climb trees, he would climb on everything. When he got into grade school, he wanted to be in basketball, he wanted to be in football, he wanted to be in wrestling, he wanted to be in track, and we had to kind of guide him into just a few sports. And he wound up being on the first state championship wrestling team, and has a ring from Andale for that. And then Andale won the first state championship football, first championship in football when he was a senior. He was a backup running back. He had an all-state running back ahead of him, so he didn't get in a lot, but he stayed with the thing. And that's the always thing about Chase. Even though he wasn't the best athlete, he always just stuck with it. He kept trying and kept doing his best, and he always got opportunities. And So then his senior year in track, he wasn't the best pole vaulter when it started out the year. But he kept working hard throughout the whole year. And then his senior year, he had to beat a guy out to make it to state. And he did that and was able to go to the state track meet where he finished 3rd place. And he wasn't even supposed to be in the top 20 in the high school at the time. And he wound up in 3rd place. He worked really hard to get there. And they won state, which is fun. So then in his freshman year, he got a scholarship to go to Hutchinson Community College to pole vault. And he was really excited about that because he wanted to vault at the college level. I was a vaulter in college at Fort Hays State University, so he wanted to beat his dad, so that was part of his drive all the time, was to beat dad. Well, his freshman year, he didn't do as well at college as he had hoped. I didn't ever coach him that much. Andrew has a great high school pole vaulting coach. He's coached lots of state champions. And so I kind of let him coach him, but I gave him a little advice here and there. Well, his sophomore year, so his sophomore year, he was really wanting to work hard. And so he worked with me through the summer, and I told him he had to get faster. He was too slow. So he worked on his speed, and he worked on a lot of speed training through the summer. He got him faster. Well, in October, they started practice at Hutch Community College. They work starting in August, but they can't start pole vaulting until October. So on October 1st, they did their first run through, and they tested out poles and things. And so then October 2nd was the first day of actually jumping into the air. And that's when Chase had his accident. He was vaulting with a pole that he had vaulted with the year before, but he got faster. And so when you get faster, the pole bends more. And he overbent the pole, and instead of the pole throwing straight up, it threw him straight up, but it threw him forward also. And so he went up, and they guessed him at 14 feet in the air, and he went over the mat. We were over the back side of the mat. And at college, they have runways that go both directions, so they're made of concrete, and then they have rubber over the top of them to help them grip. And so he went over the top of the mat and hit the mat on the back side and fell and then struck his head on the runway on the back side. So I'll let Paula
it was October 2nd, 2008. I was getting ready to go to our son's freshman football game and was headed into the other room to change my clothes in the phone room. And it was Chase's coach from Fort Hays, Hutch, Coach Becker. And he first asked for my husband, and his well, he's not here. And he said, well, I need to tell you that Chase had an accident. And I thought, how weird that Chase had a car wreck and the coach is calling me. And I thought maybe he had a wreck in the parking lot of the college or something. And then he told me that he had an accident on the mat. And I was thinking, broken arm, maybe a broken leg. And I said, well, do we need to? He said, we're going to be taken to the hospital. I said, do we need to meet you up there? Is it that bad? Because if it's a broken arm, he can handle it till the weekend. He's a big boy now. But he said, they're going to let us know which hospital in Wichita they're airlifting him to. And that should have been a major clue. But it wasn't. It was just like, oh, okay, this is serious. But it didn't hit me how serious. And as I'm talking to him, I can hear the helicopter landing on the football field to pick up Chase. Then we figured out later on that when you're airlifted, you're really, really, really bad. They don't just airlift anybody. I remember the coach telling me the words that are burned into my head. He said, it's bad. It's really, really bad. So we get to the hospital. I called Paul, told him you have to come home right now because I can't drive. I'm too upset. We're out on the bypass heading for St. Francis Hospital in Wichita, and we looked up to the west, and Paul said, there he is, and we looked and we could see the helicopter coming into the hospital with our son. So it was kind of hard. I called on the way into the hospital. I called some friends and said, hey, we're not going to be at the football game. That the other two boys need to find their Aunt Rita at the game. So Rita can tell them what's going on. So I called my sister Rita, and I said, we're not going to be at the game. This is what's going on. And get Cole and Clay to the hospital as soon as the game is over. And I called another sister, which was the first thing that we can remember where God stepped in. Because I don't know why I called my other sister Linda. But everything that happened from then on would not have happened had she not been at the hospital with us. I called her, and she was on her way home from work from Butler Community College. So she was coming from the other direction, heading into Wichita, and she begged me to let us meet her at the hospital. And I said, you don't have to, it's not that big of a deal, we'll be home in a few hours, how hospitals are. She's like, I really don't want to be there. So thankfully she was there. And when we got there, she started getting the clues of how bad it was that we weren't getting. Linda is the one that called our parish and had Chase put on the prayer line. Linda is the one that said, put him on the Father Capon prayer, because we have a normal prayer line, but then we have the Father Capon prayer line in our parish for the people that are really, really sick and need a whole lot of prayers. And without her being there, that wouldn't have happened. So prayers started going up for Chase within an hour after us being in the hospital. And I really think that had a lot to do with it. So my sister got the other two kids, and Claire, youngest, said he remembers being out on the football field and looking up into the stands, and Paul and I always sit basically in the same place, and we weren't there. And he knew something was wrong. His mom and dad weren't at the football game. And he figured it was his grandma, my mom, who figured grandma had passed away. Our other son, Cole, the middle one, was getting out of football practice, going to watch his little brother play, and he looked up and saw the Life Watch helicopter go over. But he didn't know at that time that it was his brother, but he does remember seeing it fly over. And then after the game, they were told, and they came up to the hospital.
So they flew in the helicopter and landed in Wichita. We got there and met Linda and the hospital people. And we had been to a hospital emergency room before they took you into the room. And, waiting room. They didn't wait us in the waiting room. They walked us right through and took us to a separate room. And with us, we still had a hard time accepting that he was in critical condition. We were just like, yeah, he bumped his head. He's going to be fine. We're going to get him out of this hospital pretty quick. But they had to intubate him at the scene because he went into a coma at the scene. So to intubate him means that they had to put a tube in his throat to breathe for him because he was not breathing at the scene. So they had to put a tube down his throat, and then they had to push the little bag thing to fill up his lungs with air so that he would breathe, because he was not breathing at the time. His heart was still beating, but he was not breathing. So the impact of his head, they told us that after we were in there and we talked to the air people that brought him in, and they told us how critical they were, and we still didn't get the clues when we saw these air people that were just trembling and shaking, and they were just like, this guy's not going to make it. They didn't tell us that, but you could tell that was their reaction. And so after that, we met with the doctors, and they were able to do a CT scan. They found out that he had hit so hard on his head that he fractured his skull right above his ear, and it was like just shattered his skull, and then it broke his head all the way to here. So he has broke his head from here to here. And so he hit with a lot of impact on his head. And so they had to put a little tube in his head, and that tube checks his cranial pressure. Because when you have a brain injury, your brain will swell up. And when your brain swells up, it's all enclosed, so there's nowhere for the pressure to go, and so it usually cuts off your blood supply to your brain, and then that's what kills you, because your brain has to have blood in it all the time. And so they want to check this pressure in your brain so that they can keep track of it and make sure, because they know when you sneeze, you have about 5 pounds of pressure in your brain, and his pressure in his brain was somewhere around 20. And so, if you sneeze real hard and your head hurts, imagine that times 20. They wanted to monitor that, and they had to keep track of it, and they had to try to keep doing things to push his blood pressure up to make sure blood was getting to his brain and do all these things that doctors do. And so they told us they just have to watch him. Just have to watch him. And again, we didn't realize how bad it was. And they wouldn't let people go into the emergency room with a critical patient like him. They normally wouldn't let people go in, but the next day they were letting anybody that wanted to see him go see him. And we still didn't get the clues that they were telling us he's going to die. And anybody that wants to go say their goodbyes, they're going to say their goodbyes. But we didn't believe that. And we just kept praying, and we believed that he was going to recover.
And one of the things I said, my sister put him on the prayer line. So the next morning at Colwich, we are a public school. So we're as close to Catholic as you can get without being a Catholic school. We have the best of both worlds. Sorry, teachers. And I teach 7th and 8th grade, and they're very happy that you guys have me here, and they have sub today. So just let you know that they're very happy with you. But I teach 7th and 8th grade. So all of the kids in the school go to church on Fridays. This was a Thursday night. So Friday morning, when they said the Paula Kear prayer, they put Chase's name in. And my school kids were very shocked, wondering what was going on. They get over to school the next day after Mass, and all of the teachers tell them what's going on. And our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders throughout the day got together with the teachers, and they planned a prayer service for that night after school for anybody that wanted to come. And so, like I said, prayers were started right away. And all of you, but especially 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, you guys can make an impact because they started praying. They took us all together during school, and the church was packed with people and kids praying for Chase that night after school for the very first night.
Yeah, so he made it through the first night. They were all excited. Again, we were just like, yeah, well, we knew he was going to make it through the night. But then later in the day, his pressure started to increase. And the doctor came and told us that if his brain pressure got too high, he would have to do a craniectomy and remove part of his skull. And so they took a big chunk of his head out, his skull, and let his brain swell. And his brain swelled clear out of his skull. And that relieved the pressure enough that his brain didn't cut off his blood supply. Although they still thought that he had irreversible brain damage from the accident. The doctor had to remove about 25% of the from his brain over here where it hit. It hit so hard that he had to take part of his brain out because it was just going to cause infection and cause him to die anyhow. And so they didn't give us much hope that he would survive the surgery, and they didn't give us much hope that he would survive at all. We weren't really fortunate that they were able to fly him to St. Francis Hospital. They have a church in the hospital. So we were able to go down there and pray anytime we wanted to, as much as we wanted to. And there was plenty of that. So it was real fortunate of where they took him to. So, but they said if we can get him through 3 or 4 days after the surgery, then we'll be okay. Yeah, they hoped that he would live anyway. But they wanted to get the trach tube out of his throat so that it didn't swell into his throat. But he was still in the coma, and they were still using the machine to breathe for him. One day we went in, when they were talking about, they actually talked to me about unplugging the machines, because if they unplug the machines, they quit breathing for him, and then he'll just die, and then we'll lose him. But I was like, no, I don't think that's going to happen. And that same day that they talked to me about unplugging him, we went in to see him, and the machine went whoop whoop, and made this weird noise, and we were like, what is that? And they said, that's him taking a breath. And then we kept hearing it, and within 12 hours, they removed the breathing tube, because he was breathing on his own. And then the doctor started talking to us about, okay, now he is breathing, and we can't unplug him, so we need to put some stuff to feed him. So they put the tube in his stomach to feed him and stuff like that. But they did brain tests on him, and they said there's no brain waves. And so they needed to start talking to us about putting him in a care home as soon as he got well enough. And so they pulled us aside and started talking to us about different facilities that would be able to take care of an invalid, somebody that can't do anything for themselves because he had no brain waves. But that all just turned around after about 10 days. His eyes opened, and we got real excited, and they said, "Oh, that's just, he's waking up, but you could do this," and his eyes wouldn't move. He would just blank stare at you and stuff. And so we were again trying to come with Chris that maybe he was in there, and they kept telling us he's not there, and we would talk to him and he would squeeze our hand or something, and we said, "Well, he's squeezing our hands," and the doctor said, "That's just a voluntary response. They hear your voice, they'll just move, twitch, move, do that thing." So we struggled. Again, lots of prayer, lots of family. We have lots of family. She comes from a family of 12. I come from a family of 5. So we have lots of people at the hospital all the time. They handed out prayer cards at the hospital. They had stacks of them. And when they came in, they got a Paula Kear prayer. If you came to visit us, you would have gotten a prayer card because we handed that out to everybody that came. And a little about Paula Kear prayer. We've been praying in college for years. And it came, I think, from a priest that had gotten sick that was from college, and his family used to take him prayer to our parish, and we started praying at that time. So that was one reason that we prayed for our keeping prayer when it happened, is because it was a prayer that we prayed on. So, but anyhow, he kept progressing, because the nurse came in to give him a PICC line. They were going to put a permanent IV into him so that in a nursing home, they have to be able to put fluids in and stuff. And so they were getting ready for that so that they could transport him to the nursing home. And Chase woke up. And he reached over and tried to grab the nurse. And another nurse came in and he started watching her go across the room. And they were all like, "Whoa, wait a minute. This guy's supposed to be going to a care home. And he's looking at it." And they got all excited. They called us. And normally when you're in the ICU, waiting room, you find out that if you get called down there, you're usually going down there and you're not coming back because your patient died, or it's sometimes exciting. And we got the exciting ones because these nurses were just jumping all over. They were so excited. He was moving. He was watching people. He was nodding his head when they asked him questions, and his brain had turned on. And so, but it wasn't a simple thing, because when you're in a coma for 10 days, your body starts to, things go away. He had lost part of his brain, so he's still having to relearn how to do things because part of his brain was gone. And part of his brain that did important things. So anyhow, he was able to go to a rehab facility after about 18 days. They moved into a rehab facility. They told us that, he would be there from 3 to 6 months, they told us. And we were like, "Well, you don't know chicks." But the doctor there had been doing brain injuries for 15 years, and he told us kind of the progression, what we could expect in the first month, what we could expect in the second month. And chicks started doing stuff in the first day that people would take a month to do. He stood up and could barely stand up. They had to hold him and then sit down. That was his first day. Within a week, he was walking around a gym as big as this on his own. And his brothers and I would go up there every night and see him. Paula stayed at the ICU or at the rehab facility with him, but they would come and see him. This is a picture when he first woke up there in the rehab hospital and things. We didn't tell him a lot about what happened, but then I took him in to shave him. And he looked in the mirror, and he saw his head, and he started pointing at his head, because he had this big hole in his head. And so then I told him what had happened, that he had a full bulging accident. He broke his head. They had to take part of it away. And I explained that to him. And then the next day I went in, and I was helping him shave again the next day. And he looked in the mirror, and he pointed at his head, and I explained to him again what had happened. And then I had this horrible feeling of maybe he was going to be like 50 First Dates, if you've ever seen that movie. Every day they had to tell the woman what happened to her and relive her life. And so I thought that was going to happen to us. The third day, we went in and he knew what had happened. And he was like, he couldn't talk because he still had, they had left the tube in his throat to be able to put air to him if they needed to. So he still had a hole in his throat, and so he couldn't talk because that's in your vocal cord stuff. So when he could talk, it was pretty exciting.
So he had a hole in his throat, and we were trying to get him to relearn how to talk. Because he had to relearn how to do everything. And you think about, you hear people having to relearn, but like eating, you don't really think about. You have to, your brain has to tell your hand to pick up the fork, tell your hand to pick up the food, put it in your mouth, and then once it's in your mouth, everything that happens from your spit to your swallow to everything, your brain tells your body to do that. And his brain had to relearn how to do all of that. So he had a lot to learn. So he was trying to learn how to talk, and he had that hole in his throat, and a lot of the air would escape. But if you put your finger over that hole and pressed it closed, he could whisper. And so we were having to practice that. So one night when I was with him, we kept practicing, and the next morning, Dad came in before he went to work, and I kind of looked at Chase and kind of bumped him, and he put his hand up there, and he said, "I love you, Dad." And it was just a real weak whisper, but those were the first words that he spoke after the accident. And from then on, things just worked faster and faster and faster. The doctor would tell us, well, in a few weeks, he'll probably start doing this. And that afternoon, he started doing it instead. The doctor said he never saw anyone progress the way Chase did, from literally minute by minute fighting for his life to in 20-some days, he was walking down the halls. Now, he had to walk with help because he was so weak. He went from 155 pounds to 119 in 18 days. So he was starting to look a little bit like a Holocaust victim. But he couldn't eat for probably the first 3 weeks that he was there. He could not eat at all. He was probably there 2 weeks before he could even suck on ice chips, like a snow cone or something. So when he finally got his first meal, it was something special because once he did start talking and you could hear him, all he would say was, "Mountain Dew, Mountain Dew, Mountain Dew." That's all he wanted, and he couldn't have one. So when he really first got to eat, that was amazing. So we took a lot of pictures of that. He got his smile back. If you know Chase, his eyes aren't really good in this picture, but they're still a little faded. When he first woke up, his eyes were open, but there was no one home. And we always wondered if his eyes were going to go back to Chase. And even at this point, his eyes weren't quite himself. He still had the hole in his head, so he got to wear this really cool looking helmet all the time when he got to walk. And boy, let me tell you, he loved that helmet. It was pretty fancy. But he had to wear that in case he fell, because underneath the skin, where it's caved in, is his brain, right there. So if that would have been punctured in any way, it would have been more damage to his brain that was already trying to heal. This is a picture of him with his cousin. They made some weird card game. They made up some card game that had some of the rules of gin and some of the rules of pitch, and nobody knows how to play it, all but the cousins. And Tyler started dealing the cards, and Chase started playing the cards just like he knew exactly what to do. Some game that they had made up. I remember Father Lenneberg came in to the rehab to bless Chase and to give us both Holy Communion. And I kind of wondered what would happen. And so Father said the prayers, and he went up to Chase and offered the host, and I was really scared of what was going to happen. And Chase knew exactly what to say to every prayer, and he offered him the host, and he said amen, and he took it. He knew exactly what he was supposed to say. All you little second graders that are getting ready for First Communion, and you know what you're learning, all of that, he remembered it. And I just broke down and started bawling. I think Father Liver had to comfort me before I could even take communion that day. But I was so happy that he remembered all of that. So he did not lose very, very little memory at all. He had to relearn everything, but he was learning it quickly. He lost about 2 weeks before the accident until, when he woke up. That has since come back. He remembers the accident vividly. It came back in pieces. And the weird thing is, a lot of the pieces would come back when he was sitting in Sunday church. He would have flashes as Mass was going on. So he remembers everything now. He lost no memories. If we ask him something from when he was little, we say, hey, do you remember that wrestling tournament in Derby when that kid kicked your butt? He will remember it. We have to bring it up, but he can get it. So he lost no memories. December 7th, so his accident was October 2nd, December 7th, the date of his baptism, he got his skull replaced. So he does not have that hole in his head anymore, thank goodness. They put a plate in his head, and he's just normal now. They actually said that if he were in any kind of an accident or a fall or anything, that actually that part of his head is stronger than any other part of his skull. So if something's going to happen, it's going to happen somewhere else before it enters that part again. So that was his Christmas present that year, was to get his skull replaced. That he never got that for Christmas. We kind of had to condense it a little bit. We're used to talking to adults. Life after the accident. Chase came home a month after the accident happened. He walked in our front door by himself. He was supposed to go to a care home, and he was never supposed to be able to care for himself. And he walked through our front door. He did rehab quite a bit, outpatient rehab, but now he is a senior at Fort Lee State University. With the grace of God, he will graduate December of this coming year. So everybody say prayers that he passes all his classes, please. But he is a senior. He's going into communications. He did pole vault again. He pole vaulted 2 years after his accident, almost to the day. He went back up to Hutch, and they have they call it the night relays, but it's during the day. And he did participate, and he got 8 out of 12. So he didn't place last when he pole vaulted. Paul and I took a lot of flack from adults. There were a lot of adults that judged us and thought we were bad parents and told us that because we were letting him pole vault again. And we just told him, we raised our kids to get back up on that horse if it bucks you off. If something brings you down, stand back up. And that's what our son did. It didn't stop him. Like Paul said, nothing ever stopped Chase. This didn't stop him. Pole vault beat him. But in the end, he beat pole vaulting. It took something wonderful from him, but in the end, he beat it. And by this time, he was 19 years old. He was a legal adult. And if we wanted to stop him, we couldn't have. It's kind of like if you're in a car wreck, you stop driving. He doesn't pole vault anymore, thankfully. But I'm very happy about that. But he did place, and he did, we're very proud of him that he did go ahead and do that again.
And so he did get to go back to Hutchinson to school, and he was always a dream of being a firefighter. That was his big dream. But when he went back to Hutch, he started taking some of the courses, and all of his courses were a little harder than he had before. Just because his brain was still learning things, it was a little harder for him to catch on with things, and so he wasn't as sharp as he used to be. And then part of result of when they put the skull plate on, it changed something in his brain, and he started having seizures. And I tell him that the seizures are God's reminder to keep praying and keep giving thanks for the miracle that he is living. But he hasn't had a seizure in 5 years, but he had them for the first couple years after the accident. So his dream of being a firefighter, he said, I can't have seizures and be a fireman because I could have a seizure while I'm trying to help somebody and let them die. So he kind of gave up that dream, which was kind of a struggle for him at school because he always wanted to be a firefighter since he was a little boy. So then he went to school for a while, and then he came home and just took a job for a while, and then went back and finished his college at Hutchinson. I guess after Hutchinson, then he came back and worked for a while. And it wasn't until his younger brother went to Hayes that he went up there and said, I want to finish my school, I want to do communications. My brain's healed better, he's a lot sharper now, and classes are a lot easier for him. So he's getting along really good up at Hutchinson, up at Hayes. But he was on the volunteer fire department in Colwich, and this is when they flew the Life Watch helicopter into Colwich and did some training with a volunteer fireman unit. So he got actually, when he was in Hutchinson, they came there and he got to go on a ride, and he likes to tell the story. I get a ride and actually look around and see things instead of laying there in a coma. So he was really excited that they took him for a ride.
So like I said, he doesn't play golf anymore. He lost his dream of becoming a firefighter. So life for Chase hasn't been all peaches and cream. We got him back. Life is wonderful, but it has had its problems. He doesn't get to be a firefighter. He doesn't get to do track anymore. He was engaged, and he lost his fiancée due to this. He still hasn't found that one special girl that we keep telling him is out there. He does have bouts of, like all of us do, self-doubt, but a lot of times he doubts himself, and he's harder on himself than he would have been, because if he messes up, he feels like he wouldn't have messed up had he not had the accident. So he does have his struggles, but every day he does thank God for having his life, even though sometimes it's a really crummy life on certain days. But he knows that those days will pass and things will get better again. So he does have a really good outlook on that. Which kind of brings us to Father Capon, or Capon. We learned real quick, if you're around the soldiers that were in the POW camp with him, you do not say Father Capon. You better say Father Capon, because they will let you know. But since we prayed to Father Capon, we didn't realize what we were doing. We were just praying. And we prayed to God. We prayed to Mary. We prayed to everybody. But about a month after he was out of the hospital, I got a call from Father John Hotsey. And Father John is the priest that is in charge of the Father Capon cause from our diocese. Anything that needs to be done, he's the guy that has to do it. He had been working on the cause for Father Capon for several years, but he wanted to talk to us because of what had happened to Chase. And so that's how the relationship with us and Father Capon happened. Chase is one of 3 from the area that they have sent his paperwork to Rome, to the Vatican, and they are looking at his paperwork now. Another one is a girl from Mays. She was 12 years old, and she was playing soccer and just started throwing up blood. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. Her body was killing itself from the inside out, and they couldn't stop it. And she was dying, and she was on death's door just like Chase, and all of a sudden, her parish from here in Wichita, I can't remember which parish now, started praying, and it was on All Saints Day that they started praying, and Avery's body started healing itself. And she is now 23 years old. She's a nurse here in Wichita, and she works on the same floor with the same nurses that saved her. And then another one is Dick Della Sega. He was running a wet race, and he remembers the start of the race, but he doesn't remember anything else. He finished the race and collapsed, and his heart stopped. He was about 21 years old when that happened. So all three of the Father Capen miracles, alleged, I call them miracles, they're not alleged, they're miracles, that the Vatican is looking at were three very young people doing their sport. Every single one of them. Chase was vaulting, Avery was playing soccer, and Nick was running a race when they were struck down and when Father Capon saved them. So because of that, we have had visitors from Rome come and talk to us. This is Dr. Ambrosi. He works in the Vatican with the Pope and all the other guys. And his title is Vatican Postulator. But what that means is he's the guy that goes around and talks to everybody that says they have a miracle, and he tries to find the things that are wrong with the story. He plays what we call devil's advocate. He tries to say, no, this is a miracle because blank, blank, blank. He has to find the holes. And he has come to Wichita at least 4 times, and he can't find any holes in the 3 cases. He said he has never investigated so many that were true miracles. So this is a picture of him, and as you know, I said, he comes from the Vatican in Rome, and he sat in our living room on our couch and loosened his tie. And he can understand English, but he cannot talk English. So he sat on our couch and talked to us through his interpreter for quite an extensive amount of time. And if you don't think that's something pretty spectacular, to have some guy from the Vatican sitting in your living room, yeah, it was pretty awesome. So these are just some pictures of him when he was, this is at Capen High School here in Wichita. This was when they had the Mass, and they got all of the paperwork from all 3 of the miracles ready to ship over to Rome. They had a special Mass at the cathedral in Wichita, and the box was on the altar, and it was as big as this table, full of medical documentation. And they sealed it with a special seal so that it would not be broken until it got over to Rome. So it's a pretty official thing, all of this.
So our travels, also, Paula Kear was awarded the Medal of Honor, and we were lucky enough to go to Washington, D.C., and we're sitting about from here for you guys from President Obama when he presented the award for the Medal of Honor. And these are a couple of the soldiers that were with Paula Kear in the camp. And so Chase got to meet several of them. And this is Herb Miller. This is the soldier, if you've seen the statues of the soldier that got shot in the foot and was laying in the ditch, and the soldier was going to shoot him. And Father Kear came and pushed the shoulder away and picked Herb Miller out of the ditch and carried Herb Miller 60 miles on the march to the death camp. And this was Herb Miller. And so Chase and him had a lot of conversation about why did Father Kear save us? And so they have that quandary, and Chase still has that quandary, and Herb Miller still has that quandary. Why did Father Kear save us? So they go with that. But this was at the White House. We all had a drink some campaign on the taxpayers. So
He's really good.
He's really good. Chase was a great artist in high school in Mandale. There's a title in the high school every year. The senior artist of the year gets an award, and then he has to paint a picture on a tile, and they put it in the ceiling. And so he has a tile in there that he did of the state championship football game that he drew, and so he's the artist of the year in the high school senior year. So he had a lot of talents, and art was one of them. He's done this, and this was at an art show. He's done several other paintings that sold in different places. We had to take him to a psych guy, and they did a psych test on him afterwards, about a year afterwards. And that guy is from KU Med Center, and he is Dr. Beatty. He took Chase's case and is using it in studies about people that say, hey, you can't do this because he's doing something. Part of the brain that he lost, he should have lost the ability to have depth perception and to be able to draw these pictures that he draws. And so he loves to draw Father Kear, but he draws a lot of other pictures too. So several pictures that he's drawn. And then this is the Paula Kear pilgrimage. We started participating in that after Chase's accident, and we have done it every year since. And it's continued to grow. Started with 5 guys first year, and then last year it was close to 200 people. So it's quite an experience. It's not for the faint of heart. It's 60 miles walking, and 60 miles walking is a long way. They did stretch to 40 days last year, so helped out. But,
more than 62.
Yeah. And but there's a lot of prayers and a lot of reflection on Paula Kear's life, a lot of history on Paula Kear's life given throughout the walk.
And the reason the walk was started by Father Eric Weldon. And funny thing is, Father Eric Weldon was the pastor of the church where Avery Roman, a little miracle that got started growing up playing soccer. Father Weldon was her pastor when she fell sick. Father Weldon was the one that started the Haven Walk, and we walked from Magdalene Church in Wichita to Filson, Kansas. And like Paul said, it's 60 miles, but it's not. They lie to you. It's a lot longer than that. They won't tell us how long it is. So it's more than 60. It is grueling. It is painful. It is one of the most painful things that I have ever done. But it is also one of the most rewarding things that I have ever done. I know that there are people from this school who have done it before, and other people from Derby. Father started it in remembrance of when Father Capon carried Herb Miller to the death camp, because it was about the same distance that he carried him. And while Father was doing that, he would keep a lot of the other soldiers upbeat, because if you fell down, you were shot. If you tried to lie down and rest, you were shot. So Father kept them moving so that they would not die. They would not give up the yearning to live. And so the walk represents what Father did for them. And like I said, we do it in June. And Kansas, 1 year it was 109. Another year we had to have blankets because it was so cold. But most of the time it's 109. So it's a really grueling thing, but if you ever get a chance to do it, you really should, because you feel so good when you're done. And these are just some other pictures. We've had people from several states that come to do the walk. This crucifix that Chase is holding, this is made from a guy in Mexico. He has come for several years, and every year now he creates a new cross that he carves from a piece of wood. And then we all take turns carrying the cross as we are walking. So that's a picture of Chase with that cross back here. We've got soldiers from all different parts that come and walk with us, because Father Kear was a priest, but he was also a soldier. So a lot of soldiers come, and I carried that cot, whatever, that's all of their bedding and everything, for a little while. Not very long, because it was really, really heavy that they carried that. Someone was carrying it. We walk cow paths. We don't get to walk on sidewalks. We sleep in tents and out on the ground. And so it's very much roughing it. We have Mass every day. This is Mass being said on the driveway of the farmer's house, where they open up their yard and camp out in their yard. So we're having Mass out on the sidewalk before we start off for Saturday morning. So this is a before and after picture of Chase. Well, I guess it's an after and after, with a hole in his head. And then the next one is him now, today. Graduation from Hutch. Chase is on the far side, Clay is in the middle, and they both graduated from Hutch on the same day. And Cole is in the pink, and Cole graduated 2 years before that from Hutch. So we have all three of our Hutch graduates, and Clay and Chase are the ones that Fort Hays built. And this is Chase today, love and life. That's the perfect picture of him, because that's Chase's attitude 99% of the time. He is very happy. He knows how wonderfully grateful or special that he is, and how wonderful that it is that he's still with us. And even though, like I said, life gets him down, sometimes he's flunked classes. Up at Fort Hays, lost a lot of stuff in his life, but that's still the way he is today. So we feel very fortunate for that. He prays the Father upon every day, and we firmly believe that in a few years we're going to make a trip to Rome and watch him be canonized as a saint.
That's just a family picture. We took a trip to Mexico and took all the kids and the fiancés. So this is the Paula Kear prayer that we prayed. There's several Paula Kear prayers out there, but this is the one that we prayed in college. So, I guess that's all we have. Oh, do you want to pray? Yes. Shall we say the prayer? Yes. Okay.
Dear Father,
Son, Holy Spirit. Sorry. Father Abel Capen gave glory to God by following his call to the people of Kansas and those in the military. Father Capen, I ask your intercession not only for these needs which I mention now, cover and face here, but that I too may follow your example of service to God and my neighbor. For the gifts of courage and valor and the perseverance of faith, we give you thanks, O Lord. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among